severe, extensive, and prolonged as those experienced for most of 2020.
Justice Alito saying in some areas religious liberty is becoming a disfavored right. A Catholic diocese in New York State has filed an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court over restrictions reimposed on it.
The Diocese of Brooklyn submitted an emergency filing to U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. It's calling on the court to block Governor Andrew Cuomo's order that limits gatherings to no more than 25 people, but in areas with higher rates of infection to 10 people. The filing says in part, while this executive order effectively closes churches and other houses of worship, all businesses deemed essential by the governor, including everything from supermarkets to pet stores, huge hardware stores to brokers' offices, are permitted to remain open without any capacity limitations whatsoever.
Fox's Lauren Green reports Justice Breyer has asked New York State to respond by next Wednesday. And more restrictions are coming. Chicago's Mayor Lightfoot ordering residents to shelter at home starting on Monday, only going out for essentials, and telling people to cancel plans for Thanksgiving celebrations. A manhunt underway in eastern Texas and West Tennessee for a cop killer. Police say an officer was killed in West Helena, Arkansas Thursday evening, trying to arrest a suspect from an earlier shooting. America is listening to Fox News.
Happy day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
The Trump campaign buoyed by a court victory Thursday.
A judge in Pennsylvania ruling Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar had no authority to extend a deadline for voters to confirm their identification. The victory is more symbolic than anything. The votes had been segregated and not counted, but it gives the Trump campaign hope the U.S. Supreme Court may rule on the state's extension to receive mail-in ballots, which could affect the vote count. Also in Pennsylvania, the Trump campaign filing new affidavits has evidence voters were not treated equally, charging mail-in ballots in Democratic counties were illegally pre-canvassed.
Fox's John Roberts reports voters in 7 Democrat-leaning counties were given the chance to cure defects in their mail-in ballots, while voters in 20 other counties were not. The Republican Party of Arizona has filed a new lawsuit claiming poll workers there improperly instructed some voters to override a warning that their ballot showed they'd voted for more than one candidate in the presidential race. The coronavirus, the flu, now another potential health worry.
The number of children sickened by measles worldwide hits its highest level in 23 years. That's according to new data published from the World Health Organization and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There were nearly 870,000 cases last year and more than 207,000 deaths. And those numbers are before the COVID pandemic brought regular trips to the doctor's office to a halt. Health officials blame the measles spike on a significant drop in vaccinations. Tom Graham, Fox News.
The family of a women's rights activist from Uganda has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the National Park Service, charging the woman was decapitated in June when an unsecured metal gate blew closed in a windstorm at the Arches National Park in Utah. The lawsuit says slicing through the side of her car like a hot knife through butter. They're asking $270 million in damages. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show.
Starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson stream of consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation.
This is The Point. The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
It's time to mix things up at Subway. Come in and get Subway's new barbecue chicken sandwich. Tender chicken strips topped with generous portions of sweet barbecue sauce.
Oh, yeah.
Add on crisp lettuce, onions, and tangy pickles on your favorite freshly baked bread. Perfect to satisfy just about anyone's flavor craving. It's Subway's new barbecue chicken sandwich, available for limited time only, so try it today. At Subway, make it what you want.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I got a note here from Florida dealing with the Second Amendment. I found it in The Blaze, one of the conservative emails that I study every day as preparation for the show. And it goes like this. Excuse me. Florida governor pushes bill that would allow armed citizens to use deadly force against looters and rioters. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is pushing, quote, anti-mob legislation that would reportedly allow citizens to confront looters with firepower. The bill, which comes after months of civil unrest in the wake of George Floyd's death, would broaden Florida's stand your ground law by expanding the, quote, forcible felonies list to justify the use of force against individuals engaged in criminal activity resulting in, quote, interruption or impairment to a business. This is according to the Miami Herald. The legislation would also justify deadly force used against individuals engaged in looting businesses within 500 feet of a violent or disorderly assembly. Currently, Florida law states a person is justified in using or threatening to use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself. What a refreshing use of the language. They could have just, the author here could have just used they. Yeah. To himself or herself or another to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. A person who uses or threatens to use deadly force in the accordance with this subsection does not have a duty to retreat and has the right to stand his or her ground if the person using or threatening to use deadly force is not engaged in a criminal activity and is a place where he or she has a right to be. That's Florida law right now. Florida's stand your ground law. Now, quote, forcible felonies in Florida include murder, manslaughter, sexual battery, robbery, kidnapping, assault, battery, aggravated stalking, carjacking, and any other felony which involves the use or threat of physical force or violence against any individual. Now, that last phrase, I suppose, is ambiguous in the mouths of lefties who would consider that physical force or violence against any individual is any sort of conservative talk that they disagree with. That would be violence. Also, the bill DeSantis is promoting would give immunity to motorists who unintentionally killed or injured protesters who block traffic. The bill would also withhold state funding from local governments if they make disproportionate funding restrictions, as you were reductions to police budgets. Although the legislation has not yet been filed with the Florida legislature, legal experts are concerned the bill would encourage vigilantism and result in unnecessary deaths over mere property crimes. It allows for vigilantes to justify their action, Denise Georges, a former Miami-Dade county prosecutor, told the Herald. She added, it also allows for death to be the punishment for a property crime, and that is cruel and unusual punishment. We cannot live in a lawless society where taking a life is done so casually and recklessly. Former Miami-Dade prosecutor Aubrey Webb agreed the proposed bill dangerously gives armed private citizens power to kill as they subjectively determine what constitutes criminal mischief that interferes with a business. And the final quote here, the Boston Tea Party members would have been lawfully shot under Florida's law by the British East India Tea Company, Webb told the Herald. So I guess this guy Webb is an originalist. So this is pretty interesting. Let's just think about it for a second. Obviously, it's a little over the top. In fact, it's a lot over the top. But if I've made the point on Tall Tales I've made it several times, that the way legislators communicate with their constituents is by the bills that they introduce. So it's not unusual for a legislator who knows what he's doing to introduce a bill that he knows isn't going to pass, because it's his indication to his supporters where where their head is at. So I suspect that this is what DeSantis is doing. DeSantis is communicating the message, hey, Miami, as you were Florida, is not Washington. Miami ain't Seattle. So we're not going to allow this rampage of looting, arson, etc., like they have in Seattle and Portland, where municipal officials just stand there with folded arms saying, aren't they cute? As these BLM folks tear the town to pieces. So what the Florida governor is doing is he's sending a message. We're not going to tolerate that stuff. And I don't know if in Florida, if the governor can introduce a bill into the legislature himself or if he'll get someone else to. But the bill introduced in this form, again, is a communication. We don't tolerate looting, arson, etc. So the bill gets introduced. It gets a lot of earned media. It gets people talking. The bill is cut back to reasonable proportions, and perhaps it passes. But even if it doesn't, DeSantis has done what he set out to do. He has sent a strong message. Don't try any of this Portland or Seattle stuff in Florida, because it's not going to work. Okay, so let's go next to Zemi Ikotny. And some things don't change very fast. Today, the Daily News is running a piece in the editorial page by someone named David Zalabowski from the Associated Press. And unlike yesterday, where I had a really nice editorial from a gentleman named Dwayne Wickham, a former USA Today columnist, which really served as a good opening for the show because we got a lot of laughs out of it. It was really pretty hilarious. And I thought that perhaps the Daily News had made a mistake, and instead of running their usual boilerplate from USA Today, they had mistakenly gotten a hold of the script for a Saturday Night Live show and ran it on their editorial page. It was that bad. Today, the Daily News is running something from David Zalabowski, and it's called Vaccine, a Small Hope. I won't waste any time on it. And then the Post comes along and says, use remaining federal CARES Act funds to pay for Wuhan virus testing for all who ask and need. In recent weeks, the government's efforts to provide free Wuhan virus testing have been focused on clusters, contract tracing, and community outreach events that have been few and far between. We last saw GovGuam conduct free Wuhan tests at Zero Down and Gilbaza subdivisions. And by the way, public harassment and Secret Services had no trouble whatsoever telling us there were a lot of cases at Zero Down and Gilbaza without checking with the Attorney General. GovGuam was also involved in recently in testing of hundreds of people, including vendors and subcontractors, employees who may have been exposed to Wuhan virus in the recent black construction cluster. With millions of dollars in federal CARES Act funds left to spend in less than 2 months, GovGuam should use more of that money to provide Wuhan virus testing for all Guamanians who need it. However, in a press conference a few days ago, Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services Director Art San Augustine shied away from making a specific commitment to hold more community efforts to offer Wuhan virus testing. When asked if public health would extend the door-to-door testing to other areas, he said to the effect that public health would need to focus its attention on the tracing and testing efforts associated with black construction cluster first. Public health doesn't have to administer the testing all by itself. More private clinics can be given financial support to provide free GovGuam Wuhan virus testing to as many people as possible, provided the governor stops deliberately trying to piss them off. A few clinics have recently expressed frustration because people were made to believe Wuhan virus testing is free and that federal funds in GovGuam's hands would cover the testing. But when Guam residents walk into these clinics, they find out the cost would set them back $75 to $150, depending on the type of testing. However, the governor comes back and says, they shouldn't be charging you because public health will read those tests for free. This is right before she says, guess what, Jose? Off with their heads. And certain public health insurance plans cover only if there are symptoms. Wuhan virus testing to get cleared for work to show an employer they can resume jobs is a cost that's taken out of the pocket of employees because certain insurance plans don't cover it. Another complication for those who can't afford testing on their own is that people who are budget conscious would opt for the cheaper test that might not be as thorough. When GovGuam asks all Guamanians to be responsible in this pandemic, to wear masks, keep a safe distance, and make sure to follow the basic personal hygiene like washing hands, GovGuam needs to do more to help Guamanians. GovGuam should pay for all Wuhan virus testing so people will at least know they need to isolate themselves from other family members and from work to reduce the spread. A lot of Wuhan virus test cases don't show symptoms. And when people are walking around not knowing they're spreading Wuhan virus at work, in their household, in their place of worship, in a grocery store, among other places of exposure, the greater health risk will be to those who have serious pre-existing health issues and who have lesser chances of survival. Free Wuhan virus testing should be added to GovGuam's list of priorities. We can think of other lesser priorities that could wait or should have waited. Buying brand new vehicles for GovGuam and the hundreds of thousands of dollars is definitely secondary to Wuhan virus testing. Yeah, but the governor's already had her tests. She needs a car, or as you were, an SUV. Buying medical tents when GovGuam is a standing offer from the military for the free use of field hospital equipment is another. And I'll add one myself. $10,000 to the survivor of everyone who dies from Wuhan virus. But that's pretty defensible. You know why, Jose? The governor told us it's the least she could do. Yeah. I was so touched when, I was so touched when the governor came out and announced that, just losing a loved one to the Wuhan virus is traumatic enough, and extra expenses and things like that. So the governor said, we're going to provide a $10,000 payment to the survivor of anyone who died from the Wuhan virus. It's the least I could do. Yeah. Yeah, you could do a lot more if you used more government money, because that's all you're using, Governor. You're not doing a thing except wasting government money. All right. Let's go on to the card. November 13, Friday the 13th. Let's see what do we got here for today's show. I was looking at it a minute ago. Can you read it out, Jose? The theme for today's show.
Friday the 13th, in the middle of a second wave of a worldwide pandemic, after a national election in which some states haven't finished counting votes and living under the boot of a maniacal dictator governor, what could possibly go wrong?
On Friday the 13th. Well, there is one saving grace here, and that is that all you tailgaters out there have something to hang on to, sort of a buoy that will keep you above the waves, that being, of course, tall tales. So let me tell you what I got on the card today here. I've got Will Castro and Bavaco versus Mike San Nicolas, but today it's illustrated. I have a picture. I have a photo. And I've got Guam Waterworks versus drugs. And I've got Biden versus Tailgater number 1. Do you know who Tailgater number 1 is?
That would be you, sir.
Yeah. I've got BLM versus Democrats. I've got BLM versus Biden. Kaepernick versus America. Democrats versus Georgia. BLM versus Whitecoats. Japan courts versus the District Court of Guam. Not a whole lot of local action today, so we're going to spend a little bit more time on national politics. But I think before I plunge into the card, I'm going to go to the Tall Tales political savant, who so far has scored quite well on his prognostications. And I have to say that if you were to compare the records of Professor Ronald McNinch with Martinez. Martinez is pretty far in the lead.
Thank you, Bob.
Pretty good prognosticator. So what can you tell us today, Martinez?
Martinez, as you know, Bob, we got an election coming up in 4 days. 2 years ago in the 115th Congress, there was an ethics complaint filed against then Guam Congresswoman Madeline Berdyaew. Now, of course, the Democrats were in charge of the legislature, the Congress, and she was a Democrat. They don't like investigating their own. So what they did was they knew the election was coming up, and if she lost, they could run off the clock and never hear it, and that's exactly what they did. So they never heard that this complaint. Say, well, she's out of Congress. We have no jurisdiction. This 116th Congress, during Mike St. Nicholas's first term representing Guam, there's an ethics complaint filed against him. I say complaints plural. One on campaign finance, and the other on having an affair with a staffer, which is a violation of House rules. Same thing. Here we go again. Democrats. He's a Democrat. Election coming up. They're not doing anything. They sit on it. But if Mr. St. Nicholas gets reelected, the 117th Congress will have to hear it, and here's why. Because if they hear just one complaint against a Republican member of Congress that was filed after the St. Nicholas complaint, which is a while back, the Republicans are going to yell and the media is going to pick it up of unfairness. If they don't hear any ethics complaints, the media is going to pressure them. So the voters have to know when they vote on Tuesday that there is an ethics complaint against the sitting congressman on both having an affair with a staffer and campaign finance. They have to consider that. And if he is found guilty, even partially, it's going to be embarrassment from Guam. I have to point out that Bob Klitzkie gave Mike St. Nicholas the term the St. Nicholas Posse in the 33rd Guam legislature in February of 2015, when St. Nicholas was the leader of 5 people opposing the Wampat 10 to roll it back to 60,000, not 55,000. So he got the name St. Nicholas Posse, the leader of it, from Bob Klitzkie. State senator should only make 60,000. But this certain staffer was making 84,000 and now is making, according to the news, 94,000. Martinez dealt with her once in his official capacity as a staffer, and she just completely acted immature. So if Martinez can figure this out, members of Congress are a lot smarter than Martinez could. Do you think senators in Guam should only make 60,000, and this staffer now is making 94,000? Well, if you see how attractive it is, you know why. So we better remember that there is a complaint against our congressman for having an affair with one of his staffers. It could embarrass in Guam. Keep that in mind, Guam, when you vote on Tuesday. That's what Martinez has to say, Bob.
Got a question for you, Martinez.
Sure, Bob.
On what basis would the 117th Congress have jurisdiction to consider a complaint made during the 116th?
This complaint's just going to be made all over again. There's a very good chance it'll just be made over again.
Well,
if the 116th is act on it,
hold on.
Make it over again.
Hold on. So in the 117th, then, if a complaint is made about something that occurred in the 116th, I still have the same question. How would the 117th have jurisdiction?
Bob, you're not going to get away with it that way. Ethics is ethics.
I'm not getting, Martinez, I'm not getting away with anything.
No. If he did something wrong, he did something wrong.
I'm guessing.
Or it's possible the 116th will hear it before they adjourn. We don't know. We can't speculate. But there is ethics complaint pending. They're not, Bob, if they try and not hear that, then forget about any complaints against Republicans, because the Republican Party would turn around and say, same, and how's that going to look to the media and public perception? They're not that dumb. They're not going to do that.
My question is one of law, and that is, if a complaint is made in legislature number 1 and isn't resolved, what is the status of that complaint in the following legislature? And I would start out with the proposition that I wonder if that second legislature has jurisdiction. And if another complaint is made, can that jurisdiction go back to the earlier legislation?
You're saying you should get away with it on a technicality?
I'm not talking about that.
No,
I have a simple legal question.
No, you're trying to get him off the hook, Bob.
How am I trying to get him off the hook?
No, there is a complaint. It's going to have to be decided. The Republicans are not going to let this slide. We're talking about the national Republicans, Bob. This is going to be heard. It's not going to slide. You can technicality all you want.
I beg your pardon. The law, Mark, the law is not a technicality, especially when we're talking about the United States Congress. The law is what the Congress is all about. Now, that's a question that I'm asserting. What jurisdiction would the next legislature have to hear a complaint that
I'm
was...
not going to go there. You're trying to get him off on a technicality. I'm not going there. There is a complaint about him.
Okay, all right, I got it.
And campaign finance.
Yeah, okay.
The voters better consider that.
I'll take my technicality and go on to Drive-Through Jack. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Drive-Through Jack.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob.
Yeah, you're really eating supper early tonight, Drive-Through Jack.
Oh no, I'll be later this evening, but no, I got up a little bit early. Yeah, I just wanted to ring in a little bit what Pat said. If you remember, even Madeline had an ethics complaint against her, and that went away. There was no judgment on that. It just, Congress adjourned and it went away. We have Judge Torres that had an ethics complaint against him. I don't know what the status of that. And of course, we had Senator Espadón have an ethics complaint about him, and nothing happened with that. So as much
on Espadón's complaint, something did happen. The ethics committee found that he had committed an ethical violation, and I think they removed him from a committee. I gotta
double check.
No, that's true. Now, along the same lines, I didn't hear about an ethics complaint about Judge Torres. Maybe you know something I don't know.
Yeah, there was an ethics complaint by one of the judges on the other circuits. I think in the Carolina circuits, or there was an ethics complaint filed against Judge Torres, and it was
Judge or Justice.
Justice. Sorry. Justice Torres.
Well, you got one on me then, Jack. Now, I'll give you an example of a couple of others that never went anywhere, and that is Raging Lee and Kelly Marsh Titano, who spent money going to the United Nations, which was obviously outside the standing rules of the legislature, and that one has never gone anywhere. But going back to Madeline, the complaint was there, and Madeline ran out the clock and probably lost the election so she wouldn't have to face the music, right?
Yeah. So as much as we could, rely on ethics complaints, and really, there's really not that much you can do. There was an old saying that a politician's career is dead in the water if they were found with a live boy or a dead girl in the bedroom. That doesn't apply today.
That was a former governor of Louisiana who said, when they asked him what his chances were, he said, I think his name was Edwards, he said, unless I'm found in bed with a live girl or a dead boy, I'm going to win. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like one of those sayings, and even that standard today doesn't even hold water, because you can see the hashtag #MeToo movement, the hashtag I'm a victim, or the hashtag my email got hacked. Somehow, we've come to the point that the truth and the facts are really they're not really real. If you have a counter argument to it. So I understand where Paps is going, but our history, even here in the island, regarding ethics complaints, I mean, I don't know how far they go. I really don't. And like you said, they could run out the clock. They could sidestep it by, there's so many ways. I'm trying to remember if there was anybody in our in our politics and in our government got sent to prison on an ethics complaint.
Well,
and it's even hard to
Jack, you wouldn't go to prison on an ethics complaint.
Yeah, that's true. But it's hard even for government employees to lose their jobs, even when it comes to criminal events. So I don't know what to do, or what to think about when it comes to these things. But I understand what Paps is saying. But the history of people getting.
Did you understand what I said, Jack?
Oh, perfectly. Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah.
So, well, anyways, Bob, I just want to wish you a belated Marine Corps birthday and a belated Veterans Day. I got a little bit tipsy before the clock hit off time, so I just wanted to wish you those things. And a good weekend.
Thanks, Jack.
Hafa this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so moving into the card here on Tall Tales after a little chat with Martinez, who brought to our attention the ethics complaints against Michael San Nicolas, as though anyone on the island is not already aware of those. And no doubt they will be on people's minds as they go to the polls on Tuesday. I still have to wonder this, and that is that if Michael San Nicolas is reelected, does the next Congress have jurisdiction to hear a complaint levied in this Congress? My basic inclination is it doesn't, because ethics complaints are adjudicated by the people of the same class as those who commit the ethical violations. Only judges discipline judges. Lawyers discipline lawyers. Congressmen discipline congressmen. So the congressmen, the Congress folks, they in the 117th will not be the same as the Congress people in the 116th, even though the same party has a majority. I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's one that may very well come to pass, because Martinez called the runoff for San Nicolas. He said that San Nicolas is so far ahead that Underwood can't possibly make up the difference. So we may very well have a chance to test what I'm going to call Martinez's theorem, that if San Nicolas is elected in the 117th to the 117th, that Congress will be forced by public pressure to take discipline against him. Well, we'll be watching that one. In the meantime, fasten your seatbelts, because the most dangerous man in the room is on the line. Good afternoon, Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. I was enjoying hearing your conversation with Martinez and Jack, the usual suspects, to call it, including me, I guess. But yeah, I just wanted to respond regarding Delegate St. Nicholas or Congressman St. Nicholas. I don't know what I should refer to him as. I think I commented one time when I called in, you know, if they applied this strict rule about, you know, dalliances and got rid of anyone who had a dalliance who was in Congress, probably well over half Congress might evaporate. So, you know, of course, we did have a president that you know, did have a fling in the Oval Office.
Yeah, but he denied it. I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somehow that didn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why Michael St. Nicholas is being targeted in this way is because he was not he did not jump when the party bosses said to jump, and that is a no-no. He is not a separatist. He was not for the firing range. He is for the troop build-up. He's politically incorrect. And so, you know, that was his major sin. You know, if he was politically correct, I believe this never would have been brought up. I believe that absolutely. It wouldn't have been an issue. And Michael St. Nicholas still has my vote, and it's primarily, I would say almost completely, because of the political status issue. I was born here and raised here, and I have no interest in, I've been here 61 years. I have no interest in parting company with the United States and losing my constitutional protections of my personal freedoms and a lot more. So that for me is the dividing line, you know. And if the investigation is going on, that's going to play out. If he's found guilty, he's going to pay a price for that, and that's, you know, a big IF, a big if. That's still being worked on, and of course, you know, he'd have to work it out with his family if that, you know, if something happened. But none of that affects my personal life. You know, if we part company with the United States, that affects my personal life as well as the lives of my family and relatives. Tens of thousands of people are going to be affected by that. So that interests me much, much more. And I will be voting based on that this coming Tuesday. That is the red line for me.
So for you, the litmus test then is the issue of separatism, right, Carl?
Absolutely. And you've mentioned it, and I've mentioned it before, that Robert Underwood has long, I mean decades long, been the face and the voice of the separatist movement. And if he goes back into Congress, which he's already been there 10 years, you know, he's had a chance to show what he can do. That is the agenda he's going to push, although he couches it under the label of free association. But for us even to be able to negotiate that, as you pointed out, we would need to separate from America. We would need to become a sovereign island. And once we're there in that, what I consider a limbo state, what guarantees do we have that as to what would happen? You know, there are zero guarantees.
Well, my
would happen from
my old Aunt Florence used to say that there are many a slip twixt cup and lip, right, Carl?
Exactly.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. And I know you got a lot of secret missions that you're off to attend to, so thanks for calling.
Yeah, I've got my secret mission to-do list. Thanks a lot, Bob.
All right. The most dangerous man in the room. Okay, so first item on the card is Castro lends support to Underwood in runoff election. This was on the card yesterday. it was a little bit of comedy relief there too, because Will Castro, who purports to be a Republican, although all the votes aren't in on that yet, all of a sudden on Tuesday decided that he's going to support Robert Underwood, but he doesn't count this as an endorsement. He says, I don't want to make this partisan or even seem as electioneering because it's neither. I was asked for my vote, and I gave it as one member of our community. Earlier on, he says, based upon my personal relationship with him, meaning Robert, for over 2 decades, respect for his experience, and the high regard we had for each other during the campaign, I gave him my vote this runoff election. Not an endorsement or anything like that. And so that's the story that ran in the Post. And the Daily News ran an almost identical story today, suggesting to me that both stories may very well have been the product of press releases. That's okay. I mean, that's how the game is played. But this one, the Daily News story, went a step farther than the story in the Post, because in the Daily News story, there is a picture of Robert Underwood and Will Castro, who's not endorsing Underwood, or this is just his personal opinion. And the caption is, Guam delegate candidate Robert Underwood meets with Senator Will Castro at his Barragata home on November 10. Underwood met with Castro to discuss his platform for Congress. And then the attribution of the photo, courtesy of Underwood for Congress 2020. So
it's not an endorsement.
Not an endorsement. So Will Castro is either a little bit devious here, trying to present himself as apolitical as he endorses someone from the other party, or either that or he was played and he's incredibly naive when his picture appears in the Daily News over the credit of courtesy of Underwood for Congress 2020. Very interesting. Next item on the card here is something I have a little difficulty making heads or tails of. I'll throw it out and kind of speculate a little bit. And this first is a story in KUAM. GWA employee terminated after alleged drug use. Well, first of all, the headline's wrong, right? You don't terminate someone for drug use. With a limited exception, if there is a properly constructed drug test and an employee turns out to be positive, he could potentially be terminated. But here's what the story says. A Guam Waterworks Authority employee has been fired after being arrested on Sunday for alleged drug use on the job. GWA issued a statement saying police made the arrest based on information provided by management, and the individual is now under investigation. The employee was served a notice of termination and suspended without pay pending the outcome of the adverse action process. GWA says it has a zero-tolerance drug and alcohol workplace policy. And then I have the Post-Guam article, which is a little longer, but looks like, again, the product of the same press release. Well, let me take a short break, and I'll come back to the Guam Waterworks.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
The 2020 Census of Guam extends its warmest appreciation and thank you to the people of Guam. Your participation helped ensure our island will receive the federal funding it needs for the next 10 years. Together, we made a difference.
도모 아리가또 고자이마시타. 협조해 주셔서 대단히 감사합니다.
谢谢.
Isojapur. Topmal masal. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. And undang kuluna si Jews maasi.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are back again at the Guam Waterworks Authority, and as I mentioned before the break, the story in the Post appears to possibly be the product of the same press release. It goes on to say GWA notified police of, quote, potential drug use by an employee on duty at its main building. The Guam police had not released the name of the suspect as of 7:30 yesterday. GPD has since advised GWA that the employee is under investigation. Therefore, any questions should be directed to GPD. So the way this looks, and I'm going to use my imagination here, but the story says, you know, we suspected illegal drug activity by an employee on duty. So I have this mental image. We're out at the Gloria Nelson building. An employee is nodding off at his desk, you know, acting like he is nodding off. So somebody says, hey, look at XYZ over there nodding off. So the police are called because this guy is not, or this person is nodding off. The police come and say, yeah, it looks like this guy is under the influence of drugs. So they wake him up and do a consent search, perhaps, find some drugs on him, slap the cuffs on him, and take him away. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that isn't what happened. We'll find out if this guy is actually charged and we get a chance to see what the magistrate's complaint says. But this happened on Thursday night. So that means he ought to be, if tossed in the pokey on Thursday night, he ought to be be brought before the magistrate tomorrow. So we should have a story on Monday. And then the Waterworks has found an easy way to get its earned media and then duck out by saying, GPD has since advised GWA that the employee is under investigation and therefore any question should be directed to GPD. You know who said that, Jose? GWA. That whole department said that.
That must have been loud.
Yeah. All those people. Check with GPD.
They practiced.
The employee, now here's the part I don't quite understand. The employee was served with a notice of termination and has been subsequently suspended without pay. Well, if he was terminated...
He's a twin.
Yeah, if he was terminated, it's kind of hard to suspend him. So subsequently suspended without pay pending the outcome of the adverse action process. Once again, GWA said. Now, once upon a time, we had a statute in Title IV that allowed for immediate suspension of an employee if the suspension were necessary to prevent damage to the agency. Now, I tried to find that section today. It's not there. I have a feeling it was taken out, perhaps by the Mary Torres amendments, but it's not there. So here's how the system works. If an employee has committed misconduct, misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance, the process begins when he's served with a notice of proposed adverse action. The notice of adverse action, proposed adverse action, tells him what he did wrong, the facts underlying the charges, and what the possible punishment could be for that misconduct. That's how it starts. And that paper has to be in the employee's hands. Well, hold off on that a second. So once the employee is given that paper, he has 10 days in which he can answer. He can make an appointment to talk to the director. He can file papers, affidavits. He can file a written defense. He can bring in his lawyer, whatever he wants during that 10 days. After that, management can fire him by serving what's called a final notice of adverse action, which repeats the charges mentioned in the first notice, makes some findings as to why management thought the termination was, or found that the termination was appropriate, and says you're fired, you're suspended, you're demoted. Those are the three forms of discipline that are available. The employee can then file an appeal if he so desires. It's really hard to imagine any government agency moving so fast that the employee is arrested on Thursday night, and on Friday he's given a notice of proposed adverse action, which what must be what this release means when it says employee was served with a notice of termination. A notice of proposed adverse action is more like it. And how he could be suspended without pay upon service of that notice, that's the part I don't understand. There was a time when there was statutory authority for that, but I don't think it's there anymore. But, of course, if the employee is in the pokey, you needn't worry about it. This matter doesn't take the usual approach where if someone is accused of criminal misconduct, management puts that employee on administrative leave for 20 days. In other words, he gets paid to stay home for 20 days while the management is investigating the claim. So I'm encouraged by the fact that GWA has a zero tolerance policy for drug use in the workplace. I'm confused by what this news story says.
I think the arrest happened on Sunday, November 8th. This is confusing. But they're not releasing, they haven't released the name as of yesterday, last night, 7:30. So there's been at least 3 or 4 days.
You're right, yeah. The suspected misbehavior occurred on Sunday. So if he were arrested on Sunday and he hasn't been brought before a magistrate, that means he hasn't been charged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. So I'm going to do the best that I can to follow up on this. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Hold the turkey. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot imposing new restrictions on businesses because of rising coronavirus cases and telling residents starting Monday,
stay home unless you have to go out for essential reasons. Do not have guests over. Avoid unnecessary travel and cancel your traditional Thanksgiving plans.
Mayor Lightfoot was spotted in the midst of a Biden victory rally Saturday in Chicago, not wearing a face mask. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, addressing the Federalist Society in Washington Thursday, says many of these new restrictions are worrisome.
The COVID crisis has served as a sort of constitutional stress test. And in doing so, it has highlighted disturbing trends that were already present before the virus struck.
Including, the justice says, limits on religious liberties, pointing out that Nevada allowed casinos to reopen before churches, saying there's no blackjack clause in the Constitution. Days after Pfizer announced tests showed its coronavirus vaccine appears to be 90% effective, Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the National Institutes of Health, predicting positive results soon about the Moderna vaccine as well.
We'll be hearing some news about it in the next few days, I guess, because it seems like they're getting to that same point of finding out what the efficacy is.
Dr. Anthony Fauci telling that same forum the numbers should make people less anxious about getting vaccinated. A judge in Pennsylvania ruling the state's attorney general had no authority to extend a deadline related to mail-in ballots. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany.
Big victory for the Trump campaign. She was rebuked by a court saying, no, you must listen to the legislature. That's what Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution requires.
The Trump campaign has filed new charges that voters in Democrat counties were called in to correct problems with their mail-in ballots, while defective ballots in other counties were canceled. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Alexa. Speculation continues about who will fill what roles in a new administration.
Progressive groups are not being shy at all about pushing for serious representation in a Joe Biden cabinet. Some examples: Senator Bernie Sanders for Labor Secretary, Senator Elizabeth Warren for Treasury Secretary. Sanders says it only makes sense.
The progressive community and grassroots organizations played a very, very important role in helping to defeat Trump and elect Joe Biden. And I'm proud of the work that we all did.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters what Joe Biden got in this election was a mandate. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy responded to that claim.
I heard the speaker call it a mandate. It was a mandate against socialism.
On Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
A police officer has been killed in the line of duty in West Helena, Arkansas. Fox 13 in Memphis reports officers were fired upon as they closed in on a shooting suspect at a motel. The suspect escaped, now the object of a two-state manhunt. Floodwaters overwhelmed a North Carolina campsite Thursday, killing at least 4 people. 2 others, including an infant, are still missing. Major League Baseball writers have named the MVPs of baseball's shortest season.
Atlanta Braves first baseman Freddie Freeman got choked up after learning he was named the National League MVP, reflecting on how far he's come with MLB Network.
Dad and I, we were just taking batting practice and having fun when I was a kid, and
look where we are now. It's amazing.
Freeman, the first Braves player to earn MVP since Chipper Jones back in 1999 as he beats out San Diego Padres third baseman Manny Machado and LA Dodgers outfielder Mookie Betts. Over in the American League, Chicago White Sox first baseman Jose Abreu became the first MVP from that team since Frank Thomas back in 1994 as Abreu defeated DJ LeMahieu of the New York Yankees and Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Indians for the honor. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
The 2020 Census of Guam extends its warmest appreciation and thank you to the people of Guam. Your participation helped ensure our island will receive the federal funding it needs for the next 10 years. Together, we made a difference.
도모 아리가또 고자이마시타.
협조해 주셔서 대단히 감사합니다.
谢谢.
Gisojapur. Malmasal. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. And undangkuluna si Jules Maasi.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
What a great halftime show. Every day at 1700, we treat our international radio listening audience of tailgaters with one of the best halftime shows going. So here we are back in the studio, and I had a chance to peek at some of the Facebook comments during the show, and I'm going to go straight to Roland Torres. Now, I just read the news stories that both the Post and KOAM ran about the GWA employee who was arrested over suspected drug use. And Jose, after some careful reading, pointed out to me that the guy was arrested on Sunday. And here it is Friday, and we don't know that he's been charged. So my suspicion was, well, apparently he hasn't been charged. But one of our eagle-eyed tailgaters named Roland Torres sets the record straight by saying, according to court documents, police responded to a complaint on Sunday at Gloria B. Nelson Public Service Building where the employee was sleeping and had drug paraphernalia to include meth out on the table. So here we have a story that talks a little bit about an employee getting arrested. But when we looked at the Roland Torres comment, it's not what the Guam Daily Post did. It's what the Guam Daily Post didn't do. Oh!